Okay, properties tax discussion is the first topic for this. Are you two here for that, or? Okay.
We're here for the special town meeting.
Okay, what in regards to that? We'll let you get out of here as soon as you can, given the mass situation. I don't want to hold you here any longer than you need to be.
We would like to respectfully request the Selectmen reopen the warrant because there was some very much a lack of communication from the town administrator as to when the warrant opened and closed. And we had my client, 377 Stetson LLC, has an item that they would like to submit to the Selectmen for consideration on the warrant.
Was this posted after our meeting for the warrant periods?
But I don't think there's any legal requirement that we post that the warrant's open.
Was it on our Facebook page or our webpage?
No, it was
So
not.
they really didn't get it out there in
No,
any way?
paper.
In the paper, but what is it you're looking to, we're hoping to have put on?
377 Stetson LLC would like to have, owns the area that was the former Pine Ridge Ski Tow and the Upper Deck Bar. And they recently found out that it's actually zoned R80 because they would like to divide the property.
Mm-hmm.
And they would like it classified as business commercial, which is what it really is.
Which it was,
Right, but now
since
it's,
the 50s.
but the zoning maps, when they changed the zoning, it became R80. So the planning board has requested that they go this route.
Okay, so
Reclassify.
So reclassification is allowable, right?
Yes, but you have to have a,
There's a procedure with public hearings and other things that may not be met at this point, so and I prefer to see bylaw changes and zoning changes and things hit at the annual town meeting where people are more prepared to come out and deal with it in force. Special town meeting, we usually try to do for budgetary items and mid-year
Actually-
expenditures we have to do. And I'm not willing to reopen for that issue. But that doesn't mean the other two select board members couldn't make a motion to do so as well, but that's just my opinion. And we'll let Maureen and Dylan speak on it, and we'll go from there.
Dylan's not here.
Oh,
I
Dylan's
just
not?
Yeah, he messaged all of us before the meeting that he was going to be late, but
He's late?
No.
Okay.
So we don't have to take a vote on that, we can wait for
So-
Dylan to come and see, and unless you have
Well-
if you'd rather open and put it, then we'll wait for Dylan, if you understand my point, that we're usually,
I agree with you with
You know-
with really significant changes.
Right.
But there must be a public hearing requirement before you get to town
There
meeting?
is, and you can get in contact with Mary and Gendron, and she says that they can meet the deadline.
Okay, so basically what would happen, you would, an abutter to the abutter, all of those people would have to be notified. And during that notification, they would understand what the situation was. Then there would be a public hearing, at which time they could be heard, correct?
Correct.
And you can make all of those?
That's our understanding.
Okay. Well, you got a big job ahead of you.
Well, I've been working on it for 3 years.
Okay, then.
We've got all the necessary plans and everything.
So this is not a significant, like, change in the whole zoning bylaw situation
This
as
is
we...
2 buildings on one property,
Okay.
and there was an exemption law prior to zoning. If you had 2 buildings, you were able to split it.
Mhm.
And I went to the planning board with plans, and the building inspector didn't think it was a good idea, and the town lawyer, he didn't think that he had a tax record prior, and I gave it to him. But it's better that it's business commercial than trying to do this exemption of splitting the 2 buildings.
Okay.
There's 2 different businesses.
Well, I would say in that particular area, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a storage facility that's recently been built,
That was rezoned in the last 4 years
Okay,
to business commercial.
okay, so that's literally a stone throw.
It's
Yeah.
across the
Across the
street.
street.
Okay, then there's some guy who does like auto body stuff.
Yeah.
Is this,
Okay.
what was the rental building?
No, he lives right in the pit of the bottom of Stetson Road coming in
Across from the upper deck.
from the upper deck. You know what I mean?
Across the street, huh? I
Yeah.
haven't noticed
Well,
that.
not
Okay,
across
but-
the parking
Storage
lot.
building.
Yeah, wait, was it a storage building?
Well, it's
the
all storage
building.
units.
But I mean, then there's the guy who does the auto body.
Yeah, that's the repair garage.
Okay, so there's a repair garage, there's you guys, and there's the storage facility.
And then
And,
there's the upper deck bar and grill.
okay, so this change in zoning would, because what is it zoned now?
It's zoned R80 and it really should be
What's R80?
open residential.
Okay, but we all have I mean, the only stuff that's there is the commercial buildings.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
That's what's there.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not trying to create,
No, I know
Building.
exactly what's there, you know, I travel it sometimes, but, so.
it's not
So,
properly zoned.
so that there's no land area that really isn't already commercial.
Correct.
That's all in this area. That's abutting this thing. The only place would be maybe that house. It's on the other side of the river. I don't know what little house that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be sorta,
Yeah.
but basically, I think it's not properly zoned now. Because everything there is commercial.
Well, once again, we're not the ones that do zoning. It is
Sure.
the planning board. Do you have your 10 signatures or your 100 signatures required to be in special town meeting for the warrant, for that article?
Well, they only need that if we don't put it on the warrant.
Well, I won't support it as mine. It's not mine, it's not yours. And we're really, if we're patrioting something because we really believe in it, we're pushing it, that's one thing. This isn't the type of thing the board would typically take as their own.
Well, I'm not taking it as my own. I'm just,
If we put it on, we have taken it as our own. It's our article. It's not theirs. If we put it on, it's our article.
it's not the planning board's article?
It's our article if we place it on the warrant.
No, if I had known.
Unless the planning board asks us to put it on, then it'll be their article, if we did it on their behalf, or if they came with 100 signatures or whatever the requirement is. So we're far from being ready to be on.
The only reason for the requirement of having those signatures for a special town meeting is if we won't put it on.
No.
Yes?
Mhm.
If we had known when the warrant was open and closing, we would have gotten the necessary signatures.
And in an annual town meeting, you need but 10 signatures.
You're correct.
For
You
citizen,
need a
for
proportion
any
of the-
citizens petitions like this.
Right.
At special town, because it's supposed to be a budgetary thing, and because it doesn't attract the whole town and it's a lesser known, they make the
understand.
requirement more difficult to get on, because this is can kind of sneak something through
I
without the
understand.
whole
I
town
mean,
being
if you-
aware.
if you-
So the 100 signatures is
It's not 100 signatures, it's a percentage of the
it's a
voting
percentage of
vote,
the,
which is probably above.
it's either the registered or the last turnout.
Yeah.
I forget exactly how they do
But it's a
it.
percentage
They're all
vote.
different, but it's a percentage. It usually works out around 100 signatures, it has in the past.
So
It may
if
be
the
more or
planning
less.
board were to make this presentation to us, we would put it on.
If the planning board came back and presented this to us within a week of us needing to post this, then yes, we could open and close and place it on.
Okay.
So it comes from, if the planning board wants to do it and they agree it's done wrong, they want to fix it,
Yeah.
they can submit the article to us and we can then open and close the warrant and place it on. But short of that, I'd rather see the 100 signatures and I'd rather see a little more due process on this. And it still has to have the public hearing notices prior to be
Oh,
voted on,
Yeah, I think-
or it will be tabled.
I think the attorney knows that. My concern just is, if the planning board has looked at it and said that they can meet all the requirements, then if the planning board, they will talk to us and we'll put it on. If the planning board doesn't, it's either the signatures or wait till annual.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
Am I right?
We need to go up before we go down.
correct.
Okay. All right.
It's
well,
just, usually, when it's annual town meeting, it's also easy. You set outside and get 10 signatures in 5 minutes. So you can get anything on the
Right, but-
warrant you want, but
But
it's,
simple zoning matters actually have a high rate of not passing your annual town meetings, I've noticed over the years.
typically when they're trying to rezone portions of the town. The last one, people in the neighborhood protested to it, so the petitioners removed it.
That-
But they were trying to rezone an area, not their property. You're asking to have this property rezoned, and that's different.
different.
You're asking to just change your zoning, not change everyone's zoning in that area. That's typically fails people. They're trying to change a large portion, which affects a lot of people
Well,
for
the thing that
a
would-
reason they don't like.
The thing that would be problematic from my perspective, if I wanted to build a house there, and I'd say, geez, this is residential, this is zoned for me, then I plop a house in there, and all I do is complain, because everybody else is not doing R80 stuff. They're doing, okay, commercial. So I think the planning committee should address this, and they should fix it. I
And I
really
hope they-
do.
and I
I
hope
mean, if
they
you've
will.
ever been to this little slice of property, all it is, people doing,
I would never have guessed it was residentially zoned, but
me either, I mean,
I
wow.
would never have dreamed that was residentially zoned right there.
Because even when Mosquito
And
was there.
And even when you go down across the street from there, you have the plumbing place right across the street, which is probably a light industry for that,
Yeah.
for the
Oh,
manufacturing.
yeah,
for the-
EP, the Prescott place.
Yeah, they do major pipe fittings and things.
That can't be residential too, can it?
I would hope not, so.
It actually is.
Okay, so you guys are gonna do some legwork for us, and,
Yeah.
okay, and if the planning board is so amenable, it would be on a
Right.
special, if not, we'll see you then.
So we sort of need to be 3 weeks out, because we need to have this posted 2 weeks out, which we want to really close this warrant and have it ready for print within, so we can check it out a week beforehand and let them get it ready. So it probably puts us out to the first week in February, so you have sort of just a couple weeks to see if you can sort that out with them and get some meetings in and get it done before then. And if they can bring it back, we can go ahead.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it in. Okay, now we'll go back to the property tax discussion. So I spent a little time in the assessor's office today trying to get a handle on things to explain to people. Some of it was more baffling than helpful, but in general, some figures I could share with the town that might make sense. Our total real property, real estate tax levy from the town is $9,253,000 in change. I'm rounding everything up to thousands. I'm not going down to the small digits. Of that, we have 2,923 assessed properties, 37 of which are vacant lots, 600 and, let's see, I got that number someplace, 29 are others, like business, industrial, commercial, whatever, and the remaining approximately 80% or 80-some-odd% are residential. So of that, we have nearly $500 million of total property valuation in the town of Barre. And almost 410 million of that is homes, is residential homes. So 80% of the tax money, 80% of that 9,283,000, which comes to 77.4 million roughly, I'm just doing enough number in my head, comes from homes. And there's 2,923 homes. So if every home had an equal value and everyone paid equal tax, a medium weighted mean that way would be, I think it was $2,350 per house at $140,000 valuation. So if your house is valued at $280,000, which is probably a good number for a lot of houses, you're looking at more like a $4,700 tax bill. We have houses higher value than that, and we have houses lower value than that. So people who have seen a jump in their tax bill, it's because of changes in the tax rates, tax value, condition, and area they live in. Basically, the main factors they said that will affect your taxes are the types of construction. And that doesn't mean so much metal, concrete, and wood versus they have an average, a below average, above average finish and quality to the homes. So that can put you below, on, or above value for the home. Next is your style of construction. That can mean single-family, multifamily, gambrels, capes, ranches, colonials, etc. Each of those homes sort of has a different type of valuation in town. And the last is location or neighborhoods. Not as much of a change in value because typically neighborhoods are built with a certain construction type. And maybe one year, these old split ranches aren't selling well. and the valuation doesn't change much. But then suddenly there's a move on these split ranches, and people are buying them up, and they're driving the prices up, then the value in split ranches goes up. And this is, partially in town and partially statewide. The average is statewide that they make the numbers off of. But the bottom line is the total property valuation in town is someplace around $500 million. Had that property valuation been $400 million instead of $500 million, then our tax rate would have stayed higher. It wouldn't have dropped by nearly 10% as it did this year. So the tax rate dropping by 10% would, in theory, drop your taxes by 10%. But when the valuations climb, you gain that money back. And because of the push in the housing market, some certain types of housing, and unfortunately, as we know, our assessor is leaving, and she's actually out right now because I think she has a family member with COVID, so she's staying home. So I couldn't get answers directly through her. And the assistant did a good job to get this far with the explanations for me, so I could try to bring some relevant numbers into this. But as I said, if we took the 2,923 taxable livable homes in town, and everybody paid a flat tax for their house, you'd all be paying $2,350. But then, someone who has a house is worth $110,000 is going to pay the same tax as someone who has a property worth $500,000, which is not really equitable. It's not affordable for that, to pay that same amount for someone with the lower value property. That's why it's done by property value, and it just splits from there. You can look at your own tax bill and take the numbers I gave you. If the base is about $140,000 is $2,350 in tax, you can check your valuation against that average and see how it fits in. If it fits that average, then your taxes are accurate. The total tax levy of $9,253,000 is whatever our tax levy was from last year, plus the 2.5% growth, plus any new construction and new growth on top of that. So our tax levy grows for property values only by 2.5%. So that's $2.50 per thousand is all it can raise. It can't go up a lot. On a $100,000 home, we can go up by $25 in tax. So on a $300,000 home, you can go up by $75. It's not a big jump. So when the valuations do go up, the tax rate has to come down so that number stays within reason. The only reason people have seen any unusually large jumps is because their type of property or their area has seen a bolster in prices because of the recent home sales this last year, which were, as I understand, are still going on at an insane rate. There's an all-time low, I believe, homes on the market in the state of Massachusetts, an all-time low. It's usually low in the winter, but we're lower than it's ever been. So, if somebody wanted to sell their house and capitalize, now's the time. There's no houses out there. And people may be shocked at what their house is valued at and what they receive for money if they sell it. That being said, most people aren't here looking to sell the house. They live here, and I understand it's frustrating as values change. But personally, my tax bill is over $3,500, and my house was built in 1837. And it's been, it's double what it was when I moved here into town, and I understand it rises every year. That puts my valuation at around $220,000 or $30,000, which is probably about right for my old house. I wish I was paying less in tax, but this is the services we get for it, and we can't run on less unless we start having no police, no fire, no schools, no DPW, no everything else. I mean, these things have a set cost, which is where we start the budget every year, knowing what our expenses will be within reason, and allow for certain repairs and raises and things like that. When we know the funds that we have for the year for the budget, we look at the assessed value of the homes, and the tax rate is set according to that value to give us the appropriate levy. People have suggested that we're just spending money out here like crazy and raising their tax rate accordingly. It doesn't work that way. The tax rate was set according to those property values, and when this new budget is formed and brought before town meeting in the end of June, or mid-June, we normally do it, the town has a chance to ask questions about that, what the money's for, where it's going, and if it takes longer, we go through the budget. But I can promise you it doesn't change by a large volume in any given year. And any unusual tax changes are usually reflected as someone's home value change. if somebody thinks that their value's been, appraised unfairly, they can always apply for an abatement and have it investigated, and they can do that through the assessor's office. So you always have your chance to ask about it and look into it and make sure that the assessment was accurate. Because mistakes can be made, and you could have something wrong in your house, and there's every allowance for people to look into that and have it investigated. Have anything else you'd like to say or add or contribute or comment? Does anybody online want to say anything? I'm just trying to clear this up some. They've been getting a ton of phone calls in the assessor's office.
I would suspect that the assessors have the capacity to have, dealt directly with individuals who had concerns and give them the kind of information that they need. I don't think any of us ever like to pay taxes. However, what we do like is the opportunity to have the kind of community we want to live in, raise our children in, and hopefully spend, a good deal of quality time in. And I agree with you that, it's all about what your house was worth, what you would have sold your house a year and a half ago versus what it would go on the market for now is extraordinarily different. I can't imagine that I'm the only one who will hear so-and-so sold their house for, and they give a number.
Well above the assessed value.
Yes, well above the assessed value. And, people are kind of jaw-dropping the kind of homes that are not only being built, where they're being built, and they're still selling, and selling at really, what the market will bear, which is far more for real estate property than it was 2 years or 3 years ago. So I would really urge the public to take a look at the Boston Globe. It has done numerous articles on the fact that minimally, real estate taxes across the Commonwealth have risen 4% because of what you've discussed. And so it's not just Barre, it is every place around us. And the closer you get to Barre, probably the worse that 4% looks, because homes are worth far more there, even if they are almost identical to what we might look for in Barre. So while I wish we could run the town and never have anyone pay taxes, that's not realistic, and it's important to have quality in our police, quality in our fire, quality in our schools, and we certainly don't have the kind of quality that they have in Newton. We can't afford it, but we do have, I think, very high quality for the tax rate we support.
And I would say, once again, the 4% raise is more because of home values increasing. You still can't change the levy. So if our levy this year is $9,253,000 off of real estate taxes, 1% of that will be, you slip the numbers here, will be $92,500. 2% is $180,000, 2.5%, we're looking at someplace around $225,000. So this means the levy next year could go up by $225,000. And if you spread that out over 2,900 houses,
Well, is there any impact for the municipal growth factor? Because there is a municipal growth factor.
there is. That'll be in addition to the
And
2.5%.
we certainly have a municipal growth factor, I think it's capped even. I think we're probably at the cap. We have had a lot of expansion of homes,
Right.
and, people don't want to hear it, but the
Then-
municipal growth factor is part of that number. And I don't know what that will be. She will have to give us an estimate of that.
Right, in FY '21, our new growth number was $120,213, and when we budget, we always budget conservative,
Yeah, as we should.
because that's a responsible thing to do, so.
And what percent levy increase do we do this year? Did we do 2.5%? Because often we don't.
We did not go to.
So we still have levy capacity.
Right, so we
Good-
typically,
good point.
and that's something to point out, we can raise the levy by 2.5% and then anticipate the growth
Right.
of maxing out what we did this year, and we could really say, okay, our budget's gonna be, $300,000 increase next year, and we try not to do that. We try to estimate as low as we can and make the budget work. And typically, our levy goes up from, 1.75% to 2%. We don't make the 2.5%. We've been able to stay under it, which I would think people would appreciate, that we're not just going after the max we can take and finding a way to spend the money. We're trying to keep our budget as tight as we can, as we say, and live within our means. And,
And, people still complain that they want more services, to me at least. They'll say, gee, can't you do this? Can't we have more days of this open? Can't we do that? Can't we fix the town hall because it's, handicap can't get in there, but you need to do a different ramp. I mean, so people want more things even than we're doing. So I'm ever
Right.
mindful of the fact that we kind of balance what, we can afford.
Well, there are more days of things open, like I've seen online, the library. The library's budget wasn't cut.
I
So
couldn't agree with you more.
what the library, there's a board that runs the library. And what that committee decided to do and how they intend to staff is nothing to do with us, and it certainly has nothing to do with the budget. Their budget was not reduced. They did not lose funds to put staff in there. It's how they've chosen to run the library, and that's the commission that does that. It's
Well, those
not
are
in
the
our
trustees, and
ballpark.
hopefully they will be, having those conversations and, when they get to the finance committee and obviously put in a budget for next year. It's just hard to, I understand why they're, kind of complaining, but it's been so difficult for the library. They were closed most of last year. And people are saying, we don't have the same level of service. Who did? In any public venture, they weren't open. I mean, if they think the Museum of Fine Arts was open in Boston, it wasn't.
Right.
Or the libraries in Worcester, they weren't. And, things were at curbside, and they did a great job with that. I would suspect we spent more on heat than we would have liked to admit, just opening and closing the door curbside. So I really understand that this past year for access to many of our public facilities, they've been very limited and very frustrating for people, but there's not much we can do about that. We could have done about that.
And as far as the levies go, like I said, we don't do, we try not to do a full 2.5%, and we certainly, that number, the 9.25 million, that can grow by 2.5%, and then new growth can add to that by 100+ thousand, and it can bump our levy up next year to high as 9.5 million. It probably won't be that high. And people's taxes won't change. The total volume we get, it may shift more to one home than another at time to time, depending on the valuations. And it's quite possible, obviously, if my home, which I think is very average in town, is paying, 1 3/4 of the average price, I would think a lot of people are, which means we have to have many, many, many homes far below that $140,000 average valuation. Which means for those people, they get the same goods and services town as everyone else does at far less money. And my suspicion is it's those homes that are climbing in value because they're sought after because they're affordable to people who want to buy a home.
Fixer-upper or whatever.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
I think that's been driving those numbers up, and I would suspect that's where the higher, I don't know. I didn't get into that with the assessor, because like we said, we have the interim guy filling in right now, and he's doing a good job down there by himself, but that phone rang 10 times, and I was in that office for an hour, and with detailed questions and conversations, so he's busy in trying to explain what's going on, and I'm hoping that by discussing it here, it gives people some idea of what happened and why the bills are, and a knowledge that we're not just blowing through money here. The budget we set at town meeting is the budget we've stuck with, and it will be the same thing next year.
There's lots of state data that we could share with the community to see that every other community is grappling with the same issues of concern. It's not just all of a sudden Barry's tax rate went crazy. It isn't. I mean, this has been just an incredibly different, shall we say, fiscal environment based on COVID and some of the monies that were received by communities and people, and some of it that didn't go to the right people, and so on. So we will be recovering from this for a period of time.
Bottom line is, next year, hypothetically, everyone's house could increase 100% in valuation. That doesn't mean you're going to pay double taxes. I mean, our tax rate's going to drop to 8.25 from 16.
Right.
And so the tax levy would stay the same. So the tax rate you'll see fluctuate over the years, not because we need more money in here. It's to reflect what the levy amount is and the values of the homes.
And the rate isn't really what people care about. They care about the tax bill.
Right.
I think it's also important to mention that the adjustments, as you spoke of the values, are based off of the prior full calendar year. So what we're seeing in everybody's tax bills right now is a reflection of property sales between January 2020 and December of 2020. So even like pre-COVID, which seems eons ago.
Eons ago.
So if anything, if we can gather anything from that, is that in 2021, home sales were even more crazy than in 2020. So I think we can predict that at least next year's tax, you know, we will see similar reflections in people's tax bills, that your average value of your home is going to go up again.
Well, one example, when I was down there, we pulled a ticket to look at, I didn't look what the address was, but it was a new home, newly constructed, 1,200 square foot, $261,000 valuation. So if those of you listening, that's a 1,200 square foot home with a valuation of $261,000. Granted, new construction, brand new, everything, that keeps the valuation a little higher than the older homes, but it gives you an idea of how these values are going up. I mean, to think, when I moved into town couple of years ago, you bought a 1,200 square foot ranch for, you know, $110,000. Easily, maybe
Those
less,
days are gone,
maybe
right?
less. I'm just saying, they've gone up quite a bit, and they're gonna continue to climb.
Okay,
So,
more good news, they're gonna
Yeah.
continue to climb.
but once again, the total amount of tax you pay on it won't change, not much. It's a cap tax. All right, special town meeting warrant. Do we have anything listed to go over? Is it in here for us, Jess?
It's actually that spreadsheet that's next to your phone.
Oh, okay.
So as we've discussed previously, the school district needed more money to improve the Ruggles Lane parking lot. I think we talked about that at the end of June last year, or maybe it was the beginning of July.
Yeah, it came
came
to us at the meeting
Yeah.
that they were looking for $50,000 to have the parking lot repaved, and we said, oh, sure.
Sure.
And we put it up there for town meeting, get $50,000, and then DPW said, oh, where'd you get that number from? Not from us, because that's not even close. And the number's $134,000 to do, it's the main parking lot, the back parking, and the sidewalks and everything to be done.
And drainage.
In drainage, and we couldn't come up with that money last year for it, and then we had to put it off for this, because that all came up right after town meeting, and also, we put that off to special town to look to fund that.
Right, so there's $84,000 for that as recommended by the DPW. Then also going back to the oven replacement and installation.
Now it's $1,000, or $6,000 instead of $5,000.
Right, so the oven itself costed $5,500, but then the installation of it was an additional $1,000, bringing the total to $6,500. And as a reminder, we were supposed to pay for a replacement combi oven last year at about $15,000, but the school got a grant for that to cover that, so I think that this is a pretty fair trade-off instead of paying for the combi oven. The next couple of requests are budgetary requests. So the police department, they're requesting a 10th full-time officer to fund between April 1st and June 30th, which is calculated at about $11,356.80. The police department has also applied for a grant to help offset some of those costs, about half of those costs, but we are anticipate the full amount for a request. Then we have the library, as they have mentioned before, that they were, when we were going through the budget season last year, they had submitted 2 different budgets, and the finance committee recommended, and the select board recommended that we go forward with the level funded budget, and their other budget had requested additional salaries. So here they are just requesting for those additional salaries through the end of the year. And then they had some increased expenses that came up due to some fuel and electrical issues that they had over there. So
Our fuel bid price wasn't unreasonable, was it? It didn't go through the roof. I thought we got that still at a reasonable price.
right, I think it's because of, it's a system, they had an issue with an actual piece of equipment, not necessarily the cost of fuel.
So a heating, not a fuel thing, a heating
Right,
issue.
it falls underneath like the fuel, their fuel budget line, but it's a piece of equipment that had an issue resulting in the increased expense.
So this is all right, see, we went into an agreement with them to lease the building, because they wanted us to pay for a roof, and it's not our building. And I said, we can't just pay for roof in a building that's not ours, come do my roof. I mean, you can't do that. So we did enter into a lease agreement so that the town could share in those expenses with some guarantee that we had the building for lease for an extended period of time to make sure that when we paid for the roof, it was for the town's benefit. So as much as I like to say, hey, that should be in their budget, their issues, but.
Well, I believe the Barre Library Association did pay fully for the roof and for the gutters and everything. They did pay for that. They didn't ask the town for that. They were able to get, access to some funds.
That's good, but we went into the agreement to take care of issues like this that come up,
Yeah.
so it didn't hit the library fund. So I don't like to see it, I'd rather see it say what it is. We had a furnace failure that needed repaired, it costs us $7,000, and that is, the building is technically owned by the Library Commission, it was donated to them. But we've entered an agreement, so it's there for the town purpose and town use, and we do need to maintain it. So I would definitely encourage that, and I definitely encourage increased expenses I don't understand, in increased salaries I don't like. I mean, any town department,
Well, I think they're looking.
they're expected to budget for the year and stay within that budget.
They're trying to get that position back on Friday.
They shouldn't have lost it,
I agree.
and that's not up to the town
It's
to.
a new librarian decided to look at a staffing pattern that she felt provided greater safety. In other words, there should be 2 people on each floor all the time. And that wasn't the case, I guess, in the past. On a
I
day or
don't,
two.
I don't see how there's a need for it either, but
Well,
I'd rather take that off and let the Library Commission deal with with the budget they were dealt for the year, and staff accordingly to make that fit, not say, well, I know what you gave us, but we decided, if every department did that and said, Jason says down deep, you know what, I'm just gonna put 4 more guys on. I don't care what you budget me, but come back and say, but not now when you've, $80,000, $90,000 more to put these, you can't. You have to live within the budget you give them for the year and change that staffing next year.
And that would be,
And the police request is
it-
different.
is
The
it-
police request is we have 1 officer on the overnight a lot, and that's not safe.
I agree.
It's not safe for the town, it's not safe for the officer, and I want to see that change. And
Did we get this just from the librarian, or did we get this information from the trustees?
it was signed by and approved by the trustees.
It was, okay.
So, to Greg's point, I would be my recommendation, especially since we have already set the tax rate and the tax bills have already gone out, to be super cautious about increasing people's budgets.
Right.
We're not too far off from.
salaries and expenses that's the budget they're supposed to live in. Stop spending money.
Well, I mean,
And
if
that
there
will
were-
end.
If there were extraordinary circumstances, I guess I.
The furnace is one thing, that's what I say, but saying, oh, well, this collection of books came out and they wanted more from this than we expected, then you don't get the collection this year, you get it next year. You can't,
And I mean, there's also, the other thing is also that, like, at the end of the year, Jean goes back and she makes sure that there's funds that cover things that go over budget. So
interdepartment transfers
right,
are a common thing, yes.
Obviously, we don't advocate for departments to overspend anything, but if they have a prior approval and an extraneous circumstance that means that they have to go over budget on something, then, we have safeties in place to make sure that those things are taken care of at the end of the year. Like, there are certain budgets that we can predict will go over.
But this is not one that should go over. They should be, I think, warned to stay in budget. You can't overspend your budget. You can't.
I agree with Jessica when she says if there are ever extraordinary circumstances, we certainly would consider it.
Right,
And I
but
believe
as I
in-
understand, though, deciding on a different scheduling to put that's not a reason to extend your budget.
It's a reason for them to be sitting with the Budget and Finance Committee for next year.
Exactly,
Having a
and
conversation
sitting
about
down this year and looking at what they have left, and figuring out where they're gonna be and what they have to do to meet that mark. And once again, like I said, if they have I don't like what it says utilities, increased utilities, sounds like they're running up the light bill or something,
Yeah.
Electric bill, sure, that can jump, because everyone's did. you're having issue with the furnace, you have to fix, those kind of things, yes. And we partner with them with a lease agreement to take on things like that, and I'm okay with that. That's a building issue, not a your salary and expenses, strictly line item things they should be budgeting for. Adoption of FMLA expanded maternity leave act. What is that?
Yeah, so MGL Chapter 175M is paid family medical leave, and it establishes a system for paid family leave of up to 12 weeks to care for a child. And at the state level, it was approved and went into effect January 1st of 2021.
And they started collecting for it a year prior, did they not? They set withholdings for that before it came out, so it would be granted this year.
I
I believe,
don't know too much on the state
I believe they
level.
started funding for it a year prior to that, that they came out of
Probably.
people's, not a much, but something came out of their paychecks so they could fund it so it could begin this year.
Right, but so, and that's on the state level, so I'm not too sure on how that, how they worked it out up there, but at the local level, you know, this general law didn't automatically go into effect at the local level. It's up for, it's an optional thing for the towns to buy into, so that's why somebody at the library who had a child, they had inquired about this and the town hadn't accepted it, so that's why it was brought up at this point, just to say, like, for in the future, they would like to have this option for the town employees.
For the town employees.
And there's a couple different things I've heard about this, let's just throw them out there. One is it's 12 weeks. First of all, the Medical Leave Act gave people the right to take time off, use their sick time and or vacation time without having repercussions from the work, and leave without pay if need be to take so many months off. This act pays people, I believe, to go. So for the town to adopt this, they're willing to pay the salary for those people for a quarter of the year if they have a child. And the town has to understand that's above and beyond, well, you know, it's their salary is agreed to, but if it vacates a position, need a replacement,
Right.
it can come back and cost us more money that way. And the last thing is, there's debate on whether this applies to one or both parents. It could be either, so he decides to stay home with the child and she goes back to work, or vice versa, or are we giving them both the right to stay home with the child?
I would just say, as it operates in the school districts across the Commonwealth, it is, you can take paternity leave, and if both of you happen to work for the same employer, only then would this, you know, be a double impact.
Mhm.
That's an unusual circumstance. But anyway, so that there's a paternity, you can take paternity leave, and obviously the maternity leave of 12 weeks is pretty much standard.
Right now, the town, our only medical leave is the unpaid family medical leave, which is 8 weeks unpaid. But as you mentioned, they can be sick time, vacation time, any combination thereof. And that's what we have on the books right now.
Which I think most people are prudent with their sick leave. If they've been here 2 or 3 years, they probably have 6 or 8 weeks of that piled up, and they would get 2 or 3 of vacations. They get quite a bit. The flip side of the coin is myself as being self-employed. As I had children, no one paid me to take time off. No one paid my spouses to stay home, and it certainly didn't take 2 of us to stay home and raise the children.
The sociologist would just love you.
Oh, well, my wife wanted to stay home in both circumstances with the kids and wanted to stay home with the kids. And of course, you know, then I get home from work, it's my turn. At 5 o'clock, they're mine. And I had them through the night, and I did my share. And don't get me wrong. But we certainly survived, and our kids didn't suffer any for it. So, you know, I'm not overly sympathetic to saying we should give someone 12 weeks and pay them to stay home. I would have liked to have 12 weeks, sure. It would have been a nice thing to spend the first 3 months with my wife and the child. It would make it so much easier at home, so much better at home, so much less stressed at home. Absolutely.
It's so much better for the parents and the child in
It-
very, very important and formative years. If you think a school person of the world is going to say to you, don't do this, you've got the wrong people. So we're going to be sitting here until Dylan's able to sign in. I absolutely believe it should be adopted. And I say that not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it is a benefit that will lure people to stay with us. Take a look at the revolving door we have in this town. As a result, we don't pay really high salaries, we're not even competitive, and we don't even have competitive FMLA. At least let's be competitive in something.
Don't get me
for
wrong,
people.
I'm pointing out all the sides of it. I got through it just fine, you can survive without it. That being said, as I was starting to say, it would have been a lot easier if I could have stayed home. Instead of my wife having to struggle through, especially with your first child, figuring out a newborn by yourself is, I was terrified when I took that kid home from the hospital.
all
Like,
were.
what do I break it? What do I do? And, by the time I got to number 4, it was old hat. But there certainly is a benefit to it. But people have to understand it does come with a price tag for the town. It won't be crazy, it'll be some. And I believe it does require us to start withholding from all town employees' paychecks towards this act, towards this money. So we just need to make sure that we have that information.
I think
for-
that may have already happened. I think that was
It may be at the state level, you're saying.
I'm saying that every employee who's employed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, starting, I think it was last year, it came out of your salary, it came out of my salary.
And I think you're correct. That's why I said, I know they started a year ahead of time for this.
Let's at least give the benefit.
You were
If
doing a
not
year ahead of
almost
time.
2 years.
So,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we have that information ready for town meeting, that we can say definitively when the withholding started, where they go, and what impact it may or may not have for the town. Clearly, it will have an impact for the town employees,
Well, as it should.
and people.
And the thing that I think.
So the library's asking for that, but
Well,
that adoption is a,
They're just asking to put it on there.
They are just asking to put it on.
It doesn't
Right.
just impact them. I think
but I'm saying
they're
clearly it's a town-wide impact
Yes, it's
if we
townwide.
do that.
It would be townwide.
And I think to Maureen's point, it could be something that attracts people, but then if you also look at like the number of employees who have gone on maternity leave in the past 5
A
years,
handful.
maybe 1, 2, like it's not a huge number. So I don't see this having a massive impact on our budgets.
I think that we should understand that the adoption of this particular section of the FMLA, we should make sure everybody understands what it means and what it doesn't mean. That would be important. And it's not just for the library, it would be a town benefit.
Right.
And I know that this was not asked for by anyone, but I thought that you and I have had the conversation when we look at some of the contracts about what is the thing that we need to adopt so that if somebody's called up for active duty, what do we do? Do we pay them? Do we not pay them? What do we do? There is a law for this, right? And shouldn't we do those together? Because I know Chief Rogowski is still active. I don't know, Jason is active, I guess, in some FEMA work, but I don't think that counts.
No.
But I'm just saying that if we do have people, and we sometimes I would think in the police force probably, maybe in fire, where there are people who served in the military and are going to get called up.
Right, I don't think we have that many active anymore. We still have a few in the fire department, for sure. Of course, I was in the service for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And the one thing you're always guaranteed is your employer cannot give your job
Fire you.
away while you're gone.
Yeah,
Your
I
job
know
has to be there when you come back. So they can hire someone for attempt to fill in while you're gone. And one benefit when I used to work at Fort Devens at military base is they give you military leave. But they give you a limited amount. They give you like 3 to 4 weeks of it. So when you do your annual training and some other things, you get double paid for a while, which is kind of nice. But even the military won't double pay you
Well,
for long.
I understand
There's
that.
a cap to
I just want to make
that.
sure that if there's a statute that we should adopt as a community, that we do it. Because remember, we asked the lawyer, because it wasn't in Rogowski's contract, okay, at all.
Right.
And so we said, okay, are we supposed to put this in the contract? And she said it really should be something the town adopts. So maybe she can give us some information on that.
Well, individually, when you make someone's contract, you can come to whatever agreement you want to. So like, if that's a concern, that you hire a fire chief that might disappear for a year if he gets deployed. Do you really want to pay him for the whole year
Well,
he's
I don't know if
deployed? And the
that's-
answer is,
I don't know if
No,
that's what it
that's not-
says.
no.
I don't
But-
think it says that.
but typically you guarantee his job's still here when he comes back. And
Right.
what the military side of it does, and I think made sense, is you give him, when he's called up for military leave, we don't make him burn his sick time or vacation time to go on military leave.
Exactly.
Because, they say, everyone, I used to argue with the guys, my leaders in the military, it was 2 weekends, a weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. They said, read your contract, kid. at least,
At least.
at least one weekend a month, and at least 2 weeks a year. It was typically about 16 weekends a year and 3 weeks of annual training. So if you look at that 3 weeks and say it's reasonable to make sure they have 3 weeks, then there may be a law for that.
Well, there's
or
some,
there may be
there's some
something to
statute
adopt
that
for
we
that.
should look at, right?
Yeah, I think it's like chapter 33, section 59, which when I had gone back through our personnel, there was a lot of back and forth on whether we had adopted this, we adopted it, but then we abolished the bylaw, the personnel bylaw, and there was just
This-
a whole lot of back and forth, but we
Better,
ended
better
up-
directed, though, for the annual town meeting than now, because this would affect next budget year, next everything, and next contracts. But definitely, we got to keep on it and be ready for it and see what we have to do.
Mhm.
I think, I know in the final, I know Bob is, I know the chief, Fritcher is, I know Andruski is, and I know we had a lot of junior firefighters that were in, I don't know if they still are.
I don't know.
It's worth making sure they know too. If you want to, it's going to attract people, that it shows you're going to give them something when they do their training.
Exactly.
Then their training isn't just, okay, the military is going to give me, $400 a week and I'm going to lose my whatever from the town.
Right.
You make sure you can pay your bills while you're gone for your 3-week training.
Right.
An active duty tour is very different. If you go to Iraq and you go to combat, you're almost double paid for hazard duty, active duty, housing paid for while you're gone for your home and such. But when you just go off for 3 weeks of training, you're getting your 3 weeks pay from the military. So if your month pay is $1,800, you're getting $1,200 for 3 weeks, literally $400 a week. And
Well, I'm just of a mind that whatever we should do to protect the individuals who may be called upon to go to, active duty for a short or somewhere.
at the very least, make up the difference in their paycheck.
Yeah, we need
if
to,
not-
we need to have the statute available to, so that if that happens, we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So if the lawyer could just give us the verbiage to make sure that that makes sense, and if she sees that there's a downside to it, she could talk to us.
At the very
about that.
least, you'd like to see people who go do service for the country have their paycheck, their level maintained while they're
Yeah.
gone. So I think if they're deployed to an active duty, especially overseas, their pay will be met or exceeded.
Yeah.
That's not a concern, but for their every year training that they do all the time, I think they lose money for those 3 weeks, all of them.
And we don't really want them
And-
to lose money
no,
for those
that's-
2 weeks.
No. But-
And the way they don't lose money is by burning the vacation time for
Yeah.
military leave.
And that's
And then they
really-
get burnt out because they don't have vacation.
Yeah.
And that's not the intent either.
Yeah, I don't think we could legally do that.
Okay.
Legally do,
Make them use their vacation time if they're on,
no, they can go leave without pay.
right.
But I'm saying, if they want to maintain their paycheck and pay their bills,
Okay.
they got to burn their vacation time just to maintain their income, which is not what it should have to do,
Right.
I would never discourage military service. I enjoyed it. I think it was good for personal development, and, certainly good for the nation. I think people who join get a certain discipline out of it, and a certain amount of integrity, hopefully, they come away with it. It's
Right.
to be encouraged.
Well, so, as I was saying, the town, I was going back and forth with the town clerk and our attorney to see whether or not we had accepted this, and when we had accepted it, and it was put in the bylaw, and the bylaw was abolished, like, what happened to that? Anyways, but it actually did make it into our personnel policy afterwards, so the,
The
And
policy's not a bylaw.
No, but it says that the town has accepted this Mass General law, so we are bound to the Mass General law that covers deployment, annual training, drills, parades, or other compulsory service up to 17 days per fiscal year.
Well, just ask the lawyer if it would be her recommendation to go to the town meeting for.
Okay, sure.
If she thinks it's okay in policy, you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, if it's already in there and it's okay,
Yeah.
sure. But does that cover contracted employees or just,
It covers all employees.
okay.
Okay, so, just so I'm clear, will this make it onto the warrant, the PFMLA, or are we gonna wait till the end?
I don't,
I don't mind waiting for the annual, but
I
is
don't-
that going to impact negatively on this person who's on maternity leave currently?
No, this would not be able to go into effect for that person.
Okay,
So,
to me, this is perfunctory.
Yeah, I mean,
Put it on
it's
anyway.
one of those things I say, I like to see the annual town meeting,
I
because
understand.
it's a general thing, but I don't see any reason to hold this up. It doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it for the town. I don't think anyone's going to object to it, and putting it in place now just lets us start getting ready. You know,
Yeah.
we could adopt it as of, to be in effect for, if we wanted to, we could say we want to adopt it now, and it goes into effect in July 1st, 2022, so the town has time to prepare the books and everything for it, so it doesn't have to jump into it now. We can adopt it now as of whenever and put it into effect, but I don't know if there's any reason to put it off that
We would put
far.
it to Selectmen if put that on the warrant, not the library.
right,
Right.
Okay.
So I'd say we place it on there and maybe give it a check with treasurer and accountant, see if we need to give it a certain start time to give them time to prepare for it, if, you know, if we need to attach a start date to it when we put it on there, but I'd certainly keep that on.
okay.
In the 250th anniversary committee,
So they've requested $50,000 to help start funding their,
or whatever we think is appropriate. I had a chat with Rich about that. I asked that they target a number for their expenses and let us know what they really expect, and he said, we're thinking $100,000. I said, is that realistic? Because, you know, they want to get bands and parades, and they want to get Clydesdales, they want to get fireworks. There's a lot they want to do that costs a lot of money. And he thinks that 100,000 is a reasonable number, and it's a safe number. That being said, we want them to fundraise. And I think if we throw $50,000 at it now, and you go to fundraise, people go, they got half the money, why bother? I do expect in a couple of years, as we know, after town meeting, when we took our, town meeting didn't happen in June, it happened in late July. And during the early weeks of July, we had the rest of our excise taxes come in for automobile, like $220,000 worth. We budgeted according to that for the last year's collections. So when it was all said and done, DOR said, oh, no. That came in after the 30th. Yes, it was for last year's, but it came in late. So you're $220,000 short in your budget. So that 220 is coming in, plus it actually already came in, 440. And then we need to steal money and refund it, 220. So we've got a lot of money coming in when our next free cash allowance is done, next November,
Well,
which will be prior to
we
the
haven't-
250th. So we will have opportunity.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with, the funding the 250th anniversary at all. What I
Right.
have a problem with is, again, this year, we are not able to even certify free cash for this fiscal year. That's the problem.
Right.
That's
So
a huge
I
problem.
expect we'll have these things situated and done, and we'll get our free cash certified, and we should
Oh,
have,
we will get it
and we
certified.
should have an abundance of free cash to put whatever we need to towards it in the 11th hour there. So I don't want to, we're waiting till June of 2024. This has got to be in the 2023 budget, it's the next year's budget, so we can wait till next year free cash and see what we've done for fundraising between now and then. So I suggested maybe we throw $10,000 to it if we can, to get it rolling. If we need to wait till annual town meeting, we wait till annual town meeting. I don't mind putting some money towards it and showing, because we're committed, we want this. This is our board's suggestion, which was started by Charlie Chase years ago, the notation that it's coming and we should do this.
Well, I think we should do minimally $20,000.
I don't. I think it's too much at this time. I want to see what the fundraising can do, because we address it now, June, next special town meeting, and then we come to our annual
I know,
town.
but
So
here's what's
if we,
gonna happen.
at 10 each time, it'd be 30,000. If they fundraise 30,000, then we need a last 40,000 at
So I
annual
call up
town.
and I want to get a particular band or concert or an orchestra to do something. And I'm going to have to
Right.
make those commitments, okay?
Right.
Now, I can't make those commitments next year when I'm only a year away from the event. If you've ever done any of this parade stuff or any of these big deals, you have to really put down a chunk of dough to get whatever group you want, or the drill teams you want, you have to say, okay, it's going to cost you how much to come? Or you're just going to pay for the, coming and going? Okay, here it is. We need 1/3 up, 1/2 up, 10% up. They're not going to have any money to operate. Raising okay, having done fundraising, all the time for schools, it is not easy to get $10,000. It really isn't. Giving them $20,000 gives them potentially the opportunity to begin to lock in some specifics for these parades, lock in for if they want to do fireworks. I mean, that's huge on its own, but you have to lock this stuff in, and you have to lock it in 18 months to a year ahead of time. You're not going to give them an opportunity to do some of that because they're going to sit around and say, okay, what can we think up now to raise 10,000, 20,000? It is not easy. I mean, I know this is going to sound ridiculous to you, but remember the flags and all the stuff we put around town? Okay? That costs $5,000 to buy 700 little flags that we recycled and saved. The bunting's a little bit, I don't know if we can save that another year, but that's just for that. They're going to want to do something like that, I would suspect, for that whole summer when they're doing the 250th. Right there, I could spend an easy 10 grand, okay? If you put me in charge of that, it would be good, but you wouldn't like what it would cost.
We could all spend money, there's no doubt about
Well,
that.
no, but I'm saying if this is a once in a 250th year, and you want any kind of quality, and you want to be able to say, what do we want, when we say this is Barry's 250th, we want it to be maybe not extravagant, but perfect, excellent, high quality. Doesn't have to be the biggest, it just has to be the most quality, so that people will say, they didn't just get a bunch of riffraff kids who were, out and doing nothing, and they have a garage band, and they're walking in there playing a tune. They really went out of their way to get something special. Not a lot of it maybe, but 5 special things is far better than 50, let's face it, ragtag, who cares about seeing it? So I'm all about giving them some money to do some operations. $20,000 is a pittance, in my opinion.
So, if you wouldn't mind, if
Oh, no.
I could interject. I would say, I support that the 250th committee is looking for the funding. I would just recommend that we wait until annual town meeting so they can meet with the finance committee and they can flesh out a plan, because I think that in order to make money, if they want to fundraise, you have to spend money, right? So if they want to have some big fundraising events, they're going to need to spend money to do that. But I just don't know, especially since we're not going to be too far off from an annual town meeting in the beginning of March anyways, to say this is a good opportunity for you to meet with the finance committee and tell them okay, between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th of 2023, here's our plans on what we're going to do with $50,000. Or, to give us just a financial plan on what they would like to do within the next 2 years to plan for putting a down payment on a good band, or putting a down payment on fireworks, or somebody to do the fireworks.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. I think it would just give us more time to flesh out
Have they given us any idea what they've fundraised? Because we started with $2,700, we just transferred, because originally at town meeting, I wanted to put 10,000 in towards that at town meeting, and we started just by lateraling the money from the 225th, so they had something to start to fundraise with. What have they accomplished fundraising so far?
$12,000, a little bit over $12,000.
That's pretty darn good in 6 months.
You and I come from a different world.
Well, they're just getting going. They've been, I'd imagine.
Did you have any daughters?
Do I have any daughters?
Yeah.
I may.
Okay, if you may have some, wait for the wedding. That's all I'll say.
I'm in that plan right now.
Well, no, I mean, $12,000, okay, is.
Dress.
That's okay.
But once again, at the target of 100,000, they've gotten 12, so, which is realistically, we didn't get this committee together till,
A year ago.
A year ago.
was it a whole year?
Yeah.
Just about.
During COVID, they had a hard time meeting and doing
Yeah, but
anything,
they
and
had
have a hard
some-
time
they had
getting any
some-
public involvement.
But they had extraordinary success in some of the events that they put together.
Right.
Extraordinary.
And I think if they do another venue in the Common next year, and they really go after food trucks, and hit bad timing with their festivals
They don't make any
everywhere.
money on the food trucks. The food trucks make the money. All
You
they
charge
do-
them $100 a truck and get 100 trucks and pull $10,000 in.
You're so dream of 100 trucks, come on.
All right, 20. But, You can
Well,
get
okay,
20 trucks in.
I'm just
you know?
telling you, if you want it done, and you want it done right, you're gonna have to pony up some money. I have no problem with.
I agree, we're gonna pony up money as well. I
Just
just,
saying that, maybe we should wait just to be sure how much we can give and so forth. But I will strongly support, okay, at Budget and Finance and at town meeting or wherever else, if you want anything decent, if you want to put your name on this, if you want it as a community to be proud of this, then you have to pay some money to have that done. You can't expect this cadre of people who I give them amazing, pats on the back for what they've tried to do. They've tried to put in a skating rink in just the absolute worst weather you could possibly have to try to put a skating rink. But that was just to build community. That wasn't even to make any money. So I
a
look
lot
at-
of people there Sunday, we stopped in Sunday.
Yeah, but they're not charging them anything.
Nope, they're just selling cocoa and popcorn and stuff,
So this
and
is
people
what-
making donations, so I'm
Yeah.
sure they still picked up $100 or two in just Sunday. I know, it's,
Okay.
but once again,
I'm gonna get you a dollar.
once again, we're trying to build community and community involvement, and that's
Absolutely.
what you'd call a loss leader in a store. You put it out there, you get people involved in town, get them on the common, and want to participate when we do stuff later, and that's the idea behind, we used to have the public skating, down the street from me, and it was very busy. And people really enjoy that, they enjoy the town's putting that effort back, and that's gonna get people involved. And that's the key to that's not to make money, the key to that is get people involved in the common and doing something. And I agree, we're gonna need to pay money towards
Oh,
this,
I would just-
and I thought we'd have to fund about half of this.
Yeah.
But I wanna let the fundraising take place as well. And my question before we go any further is, where are we funding these articles from? If we don't have our free cash approved, where are we supposed to fund these from?
I was going to recommend that we fund it out of, we could use the capital stabilization account, or stabilization, but I was hoping.
We
that
put,
free
what,
cash-
25,000 in capital is what we put in there? How much did we put in there into last year?
I thought it was in the range of 60,000.
Might have been 57, I don't know, but,
Well, if you think it is more prudent, okay, to look at making this expenditure at the annual town meeting, I understand, because of the lack of certification of free cash.
it absolutely is more
Is a
prudent
problem.
then. And
So-
some of these other articles
Because
might have
if we
to
had
be more
certified free
prudent.
cash, you could sit here and tell me exactly what we should do, but
Right.
it is what it is, it isn't. Now, I'm guessing that they can probably give us an idea of what they're gonna send over to the Department of Revenue.
Yeah, I think the more concerning thing is not the fact that we will have free cash, it's just the fact that our Chapter 90 has not been submitted, the paperwork hasn't been submitted yet, so that comes off
For
of our
this
free
year.
cash. Right.
Not for last year. I mean, we had a hell of a time getting it for last year. So you mean to tell me what they've spent from July to December, they haven't put any in, efforts to reimburse at this point?
I'm talking about last year's Chapter 90,
Wait a minute.
yes.
You mean
Yep.
the fact that we were so late in sending in the paperwork from the DPW, that we now have the entire amount of Chapter 70 that we spent in excess of $900,000.
Chapter 90.
Chapter 90,
600,000.
Chapter 90, and we don't have any reimbursements yet because our paperwork was late.
Our paperwork has not been submitted by the DPW.
Still,
For last year's?
Yes.
You mean like pre-December, or you mean last fiscal year?
last fiscal year. I was hoping it was pre-December.
So it was what was supposed to be submitted back in September.
Well, September
October,
30th, max was
Right.
late, and then it was, the paperwork started to get shuffled back and forth, October 13th-ish, and then there was an effort on the accountant's part to say, this is wrong, fix these, fix
Right.
these, fix
And
these.
tonight, no.
And so nobody's fixed it, and the only one who couldn't fix it are the DPW people? We can't, okay. So we haven't, so what's the state doing about, I mean,
The state takes it from our free cash.
Okay, so that's why we
where
have
my
the free
concern
cash.
is. My concern isn't so much that we won't have free cash, it's just from the state side. It's just that like the DPW side of the Chapter 90, that's been a battle.
okay, so,
Obviously, we're waiting on our audit to be done for free cash,
well,
but what's our number on free cash internally?
I would have to check with you on that.
That's important to
the
know too
audit's
before
in
we spend
process,
this
I
money.
believe.
It's It did start, they're gonna be here next week.
Okay. So
They've
so
started
I
collecting
can, I can
stuff,
meet
but-
with the auditor and we can, I can get you some idea.
We need to have an idea where we stand on that. I'm fundamentally against touching stabilization unless we have to.
I
Capital
agree.
purchase, this is why we did it,
Yeah.
to do something like the parking lot that needs this repair, and we're woefully
Well,
underfunded
well,
on it.
Well, obviously, the lack of certification of free cash is an immense issue of concern.
Oh, yes, especially, this is from last
The
year.
lack of paperwork into the state to access money that we are owed is like, that's worse than the tax rate people squawking about. So, I guess, Jessica, at this point, I'm not at all opposed to funding the 250th anniversary. It may not be prudent for us to jump too much into that right now. Not because I don't think we should, but, and then maybe we could put an amount on there depending on what will happen in the next month and then
Right.
pass over it if we still have no idea.
Right.
Because I do feel that, that other problem we have to resolve.
Like if they needed, maybe like if they needed $10,000 from the town between now and June to support whatever fundraising initiative or something that they need, I could see that being reasonable, but for this short of a time frame between now and the
It's 5
annual town
months, yeah.
meeting, and to not have like a specific goal that they have in mind to accomplish with the funds, within that short time frame, I think that sometimes the timing, it might be good for an annual.
Once again, to me, and it's been since I've been on this board, these special town meetings are to fund gaps and things that come up and unforeseen expenses. Salaries and expenses at library, absolutely not. The FMLA is not an expense, I have no problem with that on. The $7,100 increased utilities down there, I say we should pay for it, but maybe that can wait till June and be funded at the annual town meeting, because it's within the fiscal year.
Right.
So there's no reason we can't pick it up then.
Right.
Why don't you let me look at that?
But that's what I'm saying, so for now, we can leave it up, we can, at any meeting, we
Yeah.
can sit down, open this warrant, put something on and close this warrant. So,
I'd like to look at that fuel utilization thing. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just,
we're looking at is the big three. The biggest one is the parking lot, and once again, the oven.
Yep.
We could put the oven on annual and pay for that. The school has their own excess sufficient, they can we don't have to hit, I don't,
I would agree with you
I
that
don't.
that we could do that in the annual.
I will entertain it in June if that's fair. All right? I don't want to say no, I want to say we'll put it to June, let the town vote on it, I'm sure.
We've already made an agreement with them, so.
I'm sure they're going to do it. We didn't, but we can,
I'm going to tell you, don't even say that to Cheryl DeVal, because she has emails back and forth between the town and the district that paper over the fact that, yeah, we did. The town agreed with that, about putting that oven in Ruggles Lane. That was not, you had to open school, you had to cook lunch.
all right, regardless, it'll go on, and we'll do that in June. I have no
You had a
problem.
wild meeting tonight.
I have no problem. I said I was going to do something and I didn't, and shame on me. I was going to look up our meeting minutes and look up the video from when we discussed it to show how we left it. But it's irrelevant. We'll put it on in June, period. I have no problem putting that on in June. I don't want to entertain that now, too, with everything else. Now,
So we're doing the parking lot. We'll
the
be
issues
on.
are looking at the parking lot and the police officer.
And the change in the expanded FMLA.
Right, which doesn't impact us financially, but I'm looking at the two finances. The parking lot, that is still looking at $85,000. If our free cash is certified, I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue. And have it not, we put this, typically this meeting happens in late December, early January. We did this right around either pre-Christmas or just post-Christmas and get this knocked out of the way, and free cash is already long done.
Listen, free cash wasn't certified in this town last year until June.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, well, it's inappropriate.
It is.
You can't keep that.
So it makes it difficult to do these things, and I don't want to get in the habit of making a capital purchase stabilization or stabilization, because, we get our free cash in June, so we stick it all in stabilization, then we can have stabilization use a special town meeting. I just,
Well, if we're sort of not gonna do any
We-
of these
we've-
things, why are we having this meeting?
Well-
I think, well, so that's the last thing on the list. The last thing on this spreadsheet is the sewer department's request for a USDA loan for sewer improvement. And this is like one of the bigger things that, obviously at $8 million over 40 years.
and why is that coming up at a special? Why is that suddenly urgent that it needs to be special? That's what I don't understand either.
When I talked to Tom George, who requested that this be considered for the special town meeting, he said that he's been getting a lot of calls from the USDA, the people who he's working with, trying to get this vote from the town, so this loan can go into effect. So he's getting pressure from those
So
people to get this.
Is this an interest-free loan or a partially forgiven loan, or what's?
He needs to come and meet with us. This is a lot of money.
I think, yeah, so I guess that's part of my issue, is that I don't.
And this is what we're talking about, being shovel-ready for projects to go after some ARPA funds and things and grants from the government right now. I mean, this is where we want stuff shovel-ready. If that's shovel-ready, that should be a targeting for a grant.
Well, he should come and talk to us about it.
Yeah, that's,
I wasn't sure if it had come up in like a DPW meeting.
we haven't been able to have it, and I haven't seen Tom at a DPW meeting in a year.
I haven't been here a year, but I haven't seen him in 6 months. My only concern with that, if we need to have like a matching fund that's been voted for the town, if that's the thing, I understand that, and that may be date sensitive. He needs to just meet with us and explain it to us.
Well, these are the things that are potentially on the warrant because they've come in. So as of now, we can leave that there. I would say we leave that, we leave the Leave Act. And we leave the officer in the parking lot for now, and we figure out if we can fund these or how we're gonna fund them. We can always remove things later. And up until we post this meeting, we don't have to have this meeting. Once we post this meeting, we have to have it. It's the only one that can stop. That's the moderator of the town can meet and adjourn. So, you know, once we talk about budgeting and line items, the 10th officer is something, you know, I don't like the thought of any officer being out there, you know, when the garbage goes down in towns. It's not at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's on. It's at 2 a.m. when someone's breaking in a house or there's a drug buy going or something bad's happening. And that's not the time to have the low man on the totem pole, who's the newest guy out there on patrol overnight by himself, you know, waiting for the next town to get here for backup in 5 or 10 minutes. It's not the shift to leave open, and I get it. And funding that, I would like to give the town the option to fund that for the last quarter of the year and begin funding that if they want, and I think that is prudent to be on there, so. That, I want to see that hit.
That's fine with me.
And as far as the parking lot.
At least you can explain that. Can you even think or fathom, we're gonna stand up and say, a USDA loan, $8 million.
It's
And everybody goes,
$200,000 a year to our budget.
yeah, and we're gonna say, well, what does that mean?
Well,
The sewer, the enterprise.
$200,000 out of the sewer enterprise.
Right.
And that's up to Tom to stand up and justify that, yes, the sewer enterprise can handle it and they can pay for it and cover it and such and such.
What will happen?
Will it change our rates, or do they have that money? They have quite a bit of money going in those accounts.
But I mean, don't-
But they need to for doing this.
Yeah, but I just think that putting that in and just kind of dropping it on us, I really think it's important for them to at least have a conversation with us, or Jessica, or somebody, about what this means.
Well, we can invite them to our next meeting, which will be the last one we'll have before this warrant has to be finalized.
I know, well, that's fair.
And,
I suspect they know exactly what this is all about, and they can give us a really good
and
description.
this absolutely should come at DPW. We go to the commission meeting, we've asked before, we've asked for updates, or Matt did about a year ago, updates on the water and sewer side of it. And they stonewall us, like, well, then come to the meetings. It's like, why should we have to come to the meetings? We're here at a commission meeting, which is supposed to encompass all three, and they just had the water and the sewer. They should bring those results and conversations to the commission meeting,
Well,
which is about all three,
I've shown up early a couple of times and there's no meeting.
which, you know,
And I understand this, sometimes it's very appropriate not to have a meeting. I don't have a problem with that. My concern is having on the warrant, the thing given to us to go on the warrant, which says a USDA loan for $8 million. And we're going, what's that for? What's that for? We look pretty dumb. I mean, I don't like to look dumb.
No, we look pretty dumb if we go, okay, then we look pretty dumb.
I mean-
It's prudent to question it, and we definitely got to have Tom come and give us some
Well, I
explanation at our
think-
next meeting.
I think at our next meeting, we have to go over this again and get with as much detail and.
And
I think
funding aspects.
Tommy has to show up and talk to us about this. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
But if I can't say to a person who's, on the sewer, system, and they say, how much is our sewer bill gonna go up? And I go, I don't know. I mean, I'd rather say, well, this is much as enterprise fund, this is much would come off of the tax rate, this is what it will impact financially to you.
And this,
These upgrades are necessary, I'm sure.
the parking lot, we tried desperately to get it done, we couldn't
Yep. Yeah,
with the funds available.
that's odd.
And we don't want to put it off longer. This is,
Well, the only
it's a
reason-
public safety issue. It's for the kids,
Yeah.
it's for the school.
We
It's
know
a
about
school,
this.
yes, but we own the school. We own the property, we
Yeah.
own everything there. This needs to be done. It's not Chapter 90 available, it's a parking lot, and we need to fund it. So I think we need to find out, the capital purchase stabilization can absolutely go towards that.
Yep.
And since free cash is not certified, we're gonna have to take the rest out of stabilization. And I can't tell you how much that hurts me. We've built this from 176,000 to nearly $1 million since I've been in office. We've been very, very, very hard strung against using any of these stabilization funds. And this is a rare circumstance where I'd say we should do it to meet the balance of that amount, and if the town wants the officer. And those funds will be absolutely put back in
Right.
with the first free cash we have, and I expect to bring that stabilization up to $1 million this year, whereas I'd like it to be about $1.2 million, because as our,
And,
our levy rises with, 10% of levy's 900,000. I'd like to be up there, and not just the 5 minimum, I'd like to get to the 10. And really, our whole levy with state and everything involved is about $1 million, $12 million, so we need $1 million too.
I think it's also
But-
very important that we have a DPW meeting next week. And
We got to talk to Ron Hosley and make sure he has a meeting. 'cause-
Chapter 90 funding, not chapter, yeah, it's chapter.
Yeah.
Chapter 90, yeah.
I get it mixed up with school stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's holding up our opera work, that's holding up our free cash. I mean, I'm shocked. I thought it had gone in with those changes that the accountant said, you have to fix this, fix this, fix this. I mean, it wasn't a lot of fixing, it was probably a half hour's worth of work, right?
Once again, we don't know, we don't have the whole picture, but we need to get it.
Yeah, we do.
And we need to get that through DPW commission, that's the avenue for that.
Okay.
So that's.
Okay, so
you know.
we're basically pretty much, I think the attorney and her client left knowing what they have to do. That's their problem, or their, what they have to figure.
Right, it's once again, that's a surprise thing. I want to change zoning on this. There's a lot more to changing zoning than just, say, stick it in the town
We may find out
ballot.
from the planning board, I don't know, that they've had this conversation 15 times and that they've heard, yeah, no problem, I don't know.
Well, I believe, and I'm not too sure how it works in like a town meeting style of government, but I know in the city form of government, the planning board, when they are addressed with a zone change, the planning board writes a letter to the select board asking the select board to recommend to the planning board that they consider that this rezone. And then the planning board goes through their official processes, public meetings and whatnot. Then they recommend it back to the select board and then, or the city council. And then the city council, I mean, there's like 2 public meetings involved.
Well, this is what
And,
happened.
I mean, it's a pretty, like, it's a couple, I mean,
It's a formal process, and it's,
This is what happened when Mr. Linston came in here with Attorney Cranston.
yes.
Remember, he told us all this stuff, then they went up to the planning board, and as you say, we said, yeah, go ahead if you want, and then it didn't work out, but
There's
anyway.
kind of like a little bit of a back and forth between
Exactly,
the
yeah.
two boards. So the fact that we like haven't heard about this at all, and then all of a sudden it comes up and it needs to be on the warrant, I'm just like,
I've never been big on surprises and people not being prepared when they walk in here, say, well, we didn't know about well, what can I tell you, there's usually a special town meeting, and if you gotta pay attention if you're looking for it,
Well,
and
I'm always cognizant of the fact that some of us have gone to meetings in our day, not having all the facts and understanding what we were supposed to do to get there. And it's important just to help people figure out what it is they have to do to.
that's part of our website
Yeah.
with Andrew Design was to give people information how to proceed through different things. If you want a special permit, here's a process. You want a building permit, here's a process. So they can go online and get guided through it, not be guessing and jumping through hoops. And I haven't gone through all the process I wanted to look, but I hope that's been taken care of so that when people are looking to do something in town, you can go online and be guided through how to do it. I was tired of people coming in here looking for something from us when they're just not even close to being ready to be here. And it was always, well, you know, we can approve it pending this and this from that. So, well, no, get all that and come back in.
No,
And that cut that out when we did that, because then we stopped having 5 people every
It's a learning
meeting.
experience for us all. I have to say.
It is, and, you know, you learn in part, and you can change policy in part where you need to.
Well, so
And-
we're just gonna, hopefully, if we have a DPW meeting, we'll talk about the reimbursements and we'll talk to the sewer guy.
So for now, let's,
But Ronnie, we need to talk with somebody about this sewer thing.
for now, I would make a motion that we leave the Quabbin Regional School District parking lot repairs for $84,000 on the warrant, that we leave the police funding for a 10th officer for $11,356.80 for the rest of the year on the warrant, that we leave the Family Medical Leave Act adoption for the town on the warrant, and for now, we'll leave this sewer department's request for an $8 million USDA loan on the warrant. So that would be 4 articles I would suggest we leave on there.
Did we want to leave the fuel utilities?
I think the fuel and the oven can both be addressed at town meeting, because it'll be before the end of the fiscal year, and we'll have
Yeah.
time to do it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to limit what we do here, just like the 250th. We can address all those, and we should have free cash to
And we'll do a
pay
cleanup.
back.
We'll do a cleanup town meeting potentially right before the town
Right
meeting.
before, yeah. So I've also had conversations with Chief Rogowski about that, because we discussed about putting ambulance receipts, well, actually specifically, the funding from Hardwick's ambulance contract in the special town meeting, but he would like to hold off to see how his
Yeah.
receipts come in, and then decide if we need to have a meeting before our annual town meeting to clean up his budget then.
Mhm.
But depending on where the receipts come in, it might make more sense to put that money towards the next
Okay.
budget.
So that'll keep us, and we'll need from you, Jessica, please, the amount in capital purchase stabilization, because that can go towards the repair for the parking lot in full.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know the exact amount we plan to take out of stabilization, which will be the first time in 5 years I've asked to take money out of that account, and I still don't like doing it, but I see the need, and we have to get a discussion going with DPW about that Chapter 90 funds.
I will second that motion.
We have motion and a second to approve those 4 items as I read onto the warrant. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Dylan is still not with us.
No,
So that will be a-
And
2-0-0 vote
you can
to
talk with
place
Richard,
them.
about,
Oh,
okay, that we're not opposed. It's
Right.
just that we're trying to figure out a way to do this the best way.
Right.
Yeah, no,
And,
absolutely.
you know, we can take any of these back off later. We can
Okay.
open them and remove it. And if we, you know, if funding came in for something or something that was a real request that we needed to address, we can certainly add things to this warrant.
Is anybody nervous that
but-
the $84,000 number from the DPW is like a year old, and is that a problem? We okay with that, you think?
I mean, it's about 6 months old well, from the last
Yeah.
meeting that it was discussed, it was about 6 months old. So I do think-
We have, we set our rates, I believe, for our material and our quotes
Oh, yeah,
in June.
okay.
I think they're locked in until next June. So the idea of getting this now was to proceed in the spring before the
Yeah.
new rates come out
Yeah.
again next year. So we should be safe with these rates.
Okay.
Those should be our agreed upon rates for, you know, for asphalt and for material from all the companies, which is the driving factor in putting it in. So I don't think that should be an issue. I hope not. All right, moving right along then. We have a Council on Aging wage authorization, as we discussed before, bringing Eileen up to where I had expected it to have been moved a couple years ago. In the wage authorization, mine's not legible enough for me without glasses, sorry.
Move approval.
Okay, motion, and I'll second that motion, second for approval of Eileen's Council and Agents wage authorization for Eileen, as we discussed. And this is posted online so people can get the exact numbers.
Right, So it's listed on the agenda here at $49,548.
Okay,
That will be her new salary.
Which is moving her from currently,
$44,548.
thank you. So we have a motion to second to approve this wage authorization. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And next, resignation from Rachael, Carney, Administrative Assessor.
I move that we accept the resignation with regret from Rachael Carney, Administrative Assessor.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second to accept the resignation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's already been posted for a new position I saw?
Yep.
Excellent. License renewals, Mullens Tea House, Common Vic.
I would recommend we approve the request of the Mullens Tea House Commons Victualler permit.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion on the topic? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just want to let you guys know that Dylan has just with this.
Hi,
Hey,
Dylan.
welcome. You've mixed next to nothing,
Yeah.
except for discourse and argument, but hey, we have that all the time. Use of town property, Christmas in Barre wants to use our property again next year?
Gotta reserve those spots.
Look at her getting
I
ahead.
move approval of the request from the committee on Christmas in Barre, that we approve their use of town property for whatever events they are planning, and that would be December 5th.
December 2nd, December 3rd, a couple. As listed.
As listed.
As listed, how's that?
I don't have any problem.
No.
And I can't go past that without saying what a wonderful job you people did on the committee. The hours I saw you all decorating, taking down old lights, putting up new lights. Now we do have a bandstand that you guys are the first to decorate. It looks terrific. And I really thank all of those individuals who spent a lot of time and hours. I love what you've done at South Barre, and also what the little Barre Plains Common and the tree, and nicely done.
Excellent. So I'll second that. We have a motion to second to approve the use of town property for the Christmas and Barre Committee. Any further discussion?
Nope.
I'll call for vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Then we
Hey,
have,
everybody, sorry about my tardies.
that's all right. We've gotten through it okay. Nothing too crazy. Next is farmers market use from May 1st through October 1st on Saturdays from 8 through 1.
I would move the request of the Barre Town, Barre Farmers Market Group for the dates and so forth listed on their application.
I'll second that motion.
Motion to second to approve Barre Farmers Market for next year on the Commons. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And now we're going to LWCF grant application authorization.
Yes.
Jessica.
So I am applying for a grant as part of getting reimbursement for another grant for the Open Space and Recreation Plan. I have to apply for this federal grant that is administered by the state. And in order for me to apply for it, I need the select board and the chair of the select board to grant permission to me to apply for the grant.
I move the approval that the Select Board in the Town of Barre grant permission to Jessica Sizer, Town Administrator, to act as the official representative of the Town of Barre in connection with the application for the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
And that the chairman signed the letter.
And that the chairman sign the letter if necessary.
Excellent.
Second that motion. please.
Motion to second to approve Jessica for this application for the grant and for myself to sign this letter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 You have an official form, or should I just sign this one, is all right?
You
or-
can sign up for that
Okay.
one. I'm applying, just so you guys know what I'm applying for, it's for improvements at Miller's Beach.
Oh, good. That'll make a lot of people very happy.
Yeah, I'm working with a couple different agencies on trying to get some funding for down there, so fingers crossed something comes to fruition.
Great, I hope.
Excellent. Fire Department union negotiations.
So I got a letter, email from the fire department. I believe it's Stan Andruski who's representing the fire department union. And they would like to negotiate their contract soon, so we need a representative from the select board to be authorized to discuss contract negotiations with the fire department union.
I know you can't do it. Good.
I would nominate Dr. Marshall to have her first union negotiation.
I would.
Is it
I
your
would-
first?
As a selectman.
As a select
I thought
person-
it's her first.
As a select person, this would be my maiden voyage, but not in negotiations anyway, thankfully. I'd be happy to do that.
Dylan, all right with you?
Yep, I was going to make that suggestion as well.
Then you have the board's authorization. You can't, of course, you negotiate and bring things back to the board
I
with.
know that, Greg, honestly.
I
never
would
think
be
to go off
remiss
on-
if I didn't say
I would
these
never
things
dream of
directly.
going off on my own.
Yeah, well. No, you probably dream of it, but you probably wouldn't
I
act on it.
probably dream it, yes.
Okay. Mortgage sign-off. What's the mortgage sign-off we have, Jess, tonight?
So this is a very perfunctory thing. There's a resident in town, back in the, I believe it was late 80s, early 90s, they received what is today now known as a CDBG fund. Basically like a $5,000 loan from the town that we called a mortgage, and at that time it was administered by the town, for them to make some sort of improvement to their household, whether that was like windows, roof, furnace, blah, blah, blah. Essentially just something to improve their home, because at that time that this resident was low income, or needed some sort of assistance, and this grant program was in place. So now, why are we talking about this 30 years later? Well, this person is trying to sell their home, and they.
The town holds a lien.
That's what they
No, the
believe in.
town holds a lien, but they've met the needs of this lien, which was they had to own the house for 5 years.
I thought it was 15, but okay, either way, yes.
It's 15 now.
Okay.
In the current program, but back in the 80s
Yeah.
and 90s, it was only 5 years. So they've
Yeah.
obviously surpassed that, and this is just a perfunctory thing where they need, the treasurer collector needs the select board's permission to sign off on that, so they can go through with the purchase of the sale of the house.
I move to approve the request. of-
Sign off on the mortgage.
To sign off on the mortgage and to provide
Treasurer
the treasurer with any necessary documents to take care of that process.
Second.
We have a motion, second to sign off on the mortgage as presented to us this evening. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I just wanted to mention also that I ran this through our council as well, just to make sure that everything was peachy clean.
Yeah, we did several of these in the last few years.
Did you guys actually motion Maureen to be the rep?
We didn't do a motion,
You
no.
nominated her, but I didn't.
I proposed that she do it, we agreed. I don't think we need a motion.
Need a motion on that?
No, I don't think we do. We've agreed she can
Okay.
do it. If she'd like one, we'd be glad to do it, but I don't think it's necessary
Okay.
for
It's
this.
in the motion, that, it's in the meeting.
It's in the minutes, and
Minutes,
we've
okay.
nominated her to do it, and she's accepted that, so. I appreciate the diligence, but I think we're all right with that one. We're not taking any real action, but negotiating. All right.
So the very common bandstand improvements, this came up at our last meeting, and
Right.
Greg had said, do we need to approve this? And I said, no, he's just letting us know that this is happening. And then Paul emailed me the next day, he's like, so did they approve it? And I said, oh, I didn't think that they had to approve it. So apparently you guys are supposed to approve it, so I just put it back in front of you.
Are we
To
are we just approving the third invoice, or are we approving the?
This amendment.
We're supposed to be approving the addendum.
Okay, so we're approving the addendum to the contract.
The Barre Commons Committee is a committee that was established, I believe, by what our predecessors or boards.
Yep.
So they are empowered and working strictly under the authority of the Select Board.
Yep.
So as long as they are, these funds expended are with our permission.
Yep.
And I think that because this is above and beyond something they'd agreed to in expenditures, that we need to approve it.
I move
But my question remains, is this funds that they have, or this,
They
are
have.
we approving them to release funds they have, or are we trying to authorize
No.
additional?
This is funds that they have.
have.
So they have $36,877 left in the account. And then after this addendum.
They'll still have 24.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on that first page.
Okay, so I would make a motion that we approve this addendum for the work on the restoration to the Barre Commons Committee.
As provided by.
As provided by-
the Constant Barre Common Oversight Committee, dated December 30th, 2021?
Yes.
Okay. I would second.
Motion to second to approve the addendum for the additional work. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
I,
All right?
Aye.
So that's basically anytime we form a committee like the 250th, they work through us. And we should check into, there's been some discussion about how they can fundraise and how they can gather funds and where they have to go. We need to make sure that legally they have the authority to spend those funds, or at what benchmark they need to come to us, because I don't think in our charge, I don't think we establish anything about, specifically about fundraising and spending.
Okay.
So to make sure they're allowed to proceed and do the things they need to do, if you may check with town council what we have to do, we're probably gonna have to set a limit to how much they can spend without coming for our approval, such as this was, because they are a committee acting on our behalf. And we certainly haven't discussed what they can spend and how they can spend it. And the legality of fundraising, although they're a committee, it's a committee working for the Board of Selectmen, and I think we need to know how we can and cannot handle funds that come in. And I don't know the answer to that, because we haven't formed a committee to fundraise before. We've formed a committee and spent money, but not fundraising money, so that's, before we get in deep water here, I'd like to please look into that and make sure we're doing this the right way. And if Venmo works, but it may have to go into a town account, I can't imagine that the funds made to that committee is essentially an extension of us. So people are donating money to this select board. We obviously don't accept it. It's coming on behalf of the town for this project. And we need to make sure that it goes into some sort of account earmarked for this project. And I don't think we can leave it in the committee's hands to be spent as they see fit. Do you see what I mean? Without some control through us. So I would expect there's going to have to be an account
would
established.
you bring up the sign? No,
In a minute, we can do that.
no, I'm kidding. It's fine.
But I think that there has to be some sort of control for the funds through the accountant. I'm not sure. You can check with the accountant and see. And I would think it's only reasonable. There must be some sort of cap we have to put on what they can spend without approaching the board for spending. You know, maybe a per purchase limit and a total they can spend without coming back and rebooting more from us. Just to have control, because, you find out they raised $60,000, and next, they're all in Las Vegas.
I don't think so.
No, not this group, but it's happened in town before with other things, obviously. So we have to make sure we have some oversight on this, that's all. And, you can't close the gate and keep the cattle once they've already left, So. Okay, what were you saying about a sign? Go ahead.
Nothing, I know that, certainly that was the funding that would be available as, Attorney Cranston may discuss the idea of potentially
Right.
thinking about a sign.
He hasn't approached us with any ideas yet.
Well,
He
no,
was-
but I think it would behoove us, due to the number of individuals who, indicated an interest and a concern, especially
Right.
starting with the historical commission, that we would meet with them and say, what do you think?
And as I said, I think that article belongs, although we are certainly authorized to do it, I wouldn't take that. I would put that to the town meeting and let the town say, yes, we want to sign, or no, we don't.
It's fine.
And I want to bring.
And where?
Somewhere, and I want, illustrations that, artist rendition to show what it's going to look like wherever we might propose it. and give them some choices and let the town choose on it.
But I think we just should start with the historical crowd and
Yeah. But just be,
get an idea about what their thoughts are and, you know. I
but
think
we
that-
need some design from Paul first to show what we're
Well, no,
thinking
I
of.
don't think we need it from Paul. I think everybody kind of knows what everybody's thinking. but-
Well, everyone's thinking a giant sign with
Exactly.
bright yellow letters, and that's not at all what we want. I'm thinking maybe black sign and some subdued blue letters or subdued yellow letters with a brickwork around it, plantings around it, welcome to Barre fixed sign above it or something, you know, and I think if we don't present it that way, it's just gonna be
Well,
shot
I
down
think that we should
completely.
ask for the ideas, because I don't think the Historical Society's against it. They just want to make sure that from their perspective, and if they're really not on board with the design, so I was like, let's start with them.
Yep, and that's fine. If this is gonna hit town meeting, though, we do need to talk about it a little bit
Oh, I agree.
and start the ball rolling.
And our
And
hope would be if everybody's in agreement of that, yes, we should do something like this, and we could get it, maybe by the 250, we'll actually have it installed,
that would be nice.
you know, with the common money that's available. So we'll wait and see, but,
But it does warrant discussion. It does
Yeah,
warrant
I
more
agree.
discussion. We're not trying to push it on anybody.
exactly.
And I do think that's a decision. There's a lot of things to say, well, we've been voted in office. We can do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't mean we should, and I don't want to.
I just want to do the stuff we're supposed to do.
Right.
I'd just be happy with that. Okay.
Well, it would be nice. We're trying to do that anyways.
I know, we are.
All right. Correspondence?
I think we do approval of meeting minutes.
Yeah, I guess I did skip over that because I looked at them, so.
Yeah. I move approval of the January 4th, 2022 meeting minutes as written.
Second that motion.
Motion is second to approve the January 4th, 2022 meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
move approval of the January 10th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the January 10th, 2022 meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that's one of those issues that I say, I hate to do it the way we did it, but I think the expense it saves the town in the long run is I'd rather explain how we saved $250,000 than why we let it go and said, well, there's times to act, and the sign board isn't one of them. So. Correspondence. We don't have any other than that letter we had, correct, from the,
The library.
from the, okay. And I'm just looking at the 250th letter, which we've already really covered this, so we don't need to. We'll not cover that now. Like I said, we'll do that for town meeting. The resident letter about the library, okay. Yeah, not a chance. Did I leave glasses in here last time? Was I that smart? I had them at one meeting, you know that, right? I had them, I said, look. If I don't have them, it's not gonna happen. Wait a minute. Nope. Would somebody else like to read it, or should we just say there's a letter people can look at online? Sorry about that, I was gonna do it this time.
Okay, I think that this is something that's been on the
Discuss.
citizens petition. We've discussed this before. This is one of my favorite days at the Wood Memorial Library, was to go to the library on Friday. I was disheartened to learn that it was closed on Friday to patrons. I thought it was due to budget cuts, but found out later that the library was never funded and needed to close on Fridays to put resources elsewhere. I am not the only Friday patron. There are children getting books and using the children's room and the children's programs planned for that day. Adults on the main floor are getting DVDs, books, or books on CDs, not to mention using the internet or getting help on technology or on their devices. Fridays can be a very busy day. I'm asking you to increase the budget to this library. Will be open again on Fridays. The library is a priceless asset to the community. All ages are welcome to get library cards at no cost, to use the resources of almost all of the central and western Massachusetts library through the interlibrary loan system, and to ask for special loans that might come from anywhere in the United States at no extra cost to them. I wrote an informal survey on the Barre residents' Facebook and got over 100 thumbs up, one of the signs of support for this, just in a few days. Some of the support was Also from folks who do not use Facebook, I shut it down because I misunderstood the funding. Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan, and when people are actually stopped reading the original post and their messages were not on the subject, I will send the post electronically with this. Okay.
So once again, it's to the, thank you, it's to the topic we addressed
Yeah.
about the library and the funding. You know, a lot of other things we look at, say, okay, what's the traffic in there? How many people are in every day? Where do they go? You know, they try to put 2 personnel per floor is why they are not having enough to fund all the days, as I understand. You know, I would think the committee could look at their own volume of use, traffic patterns, where people are. Do you really need 2 people on every floor? You might where the kids are. You might not where people are just getting DVDs. It might be self-sufficient. You might be able to make do with less in other places. And that's really something that you'd like to see people address at the Library Commission and see if they can fix this internally before we come to the town for more money. And although we supported the library in years past on funding issues, that they had to make a certain threshold to get certain membership to what they talked about, the book program, the sharing program. They have to maintain a certain funding for that. And one year we were going to be dropping their funding by a small percentage, and that was going to hurt their ability to be in that program. So we changed that funding to make sure they stayed within it.
I think it's incumbent upon the trustees to present the budget to the finance committee that they need, and to just, you know, and to work to see.
And you got to pitch it to the town, because
Yeah.
the people that use the library love the library and use it often. And I would render a guess that maybe 10% of the people in the town use the library on a regular basis. So we are funding something that's not utilized by the entire town. I think it's important to still fund it, and that resource needs to be there for everyone if and when they choose to use it, much like the senior center. You know, the senior center isn't for all of us to go use, but it's an important thing to have and fund to a certain level. And the town's participation in that is decided by the town at town meeting. And if they bring their concerns to the council, and that library can meet, as you said, with the finance committee and with our administrator.
Which I believe they do.
Yep, and they can propose whatever they feel fits for town meeting.
Exactly.
And the town will have their say on it, if they agree or they don't. So they have an opportunity now to continue on Facebook and to continue with some sort of public program to get recognition and drum up some support. If they're looking for more funding at town meeting, they need to really get that ball rolling now to develop their own support for it, to do so. Otherwise, we typically level fund or a slight increase, and I don't see us changing without some sort of real public support behind it. So they're on the right path with the Facebook thing, with the letter, but they need to bring that into the committee meetings and get recognition if they're going to get the budget increase that they want. Okay. Now we'll come to Selectboard Reports. I would just say that I went down to, meet with the 250th, but we've talked about that already, and I went to the rink and talked about the total money, and you've heard what I have to say on it, so I won't repeat. Obviously, I spent some time in the assessor's office for those numbers, and it's still, it is what it is. The numbers didn't fully make sense to me, as far as it seemed like 140,000 and doesn't seem like nearly the median, the average, weighted average in town. But that's the way it comes out to be. And without looking at 3,000 appraisals of properties, I won't know where all those numbers fall, and that's not within my time or duties to do so. But that's at least the information we get to share for people, and I'm hoping it helps some people understand a little better. Now, I did talk to a couple of people this weekend about it, specifically about where the rate comes from and how it can be changed, because they generally don't understand, and I'm just hoping it was helpful.
I have nothing to report, Mr. Chair.
All right, Dylan?
No report this week.
Well, that leaves us who? Sandy, did you have anything for us? No, someone. Oh, Jessica, you might.
Thank you. So happy New Year. I know it's
Happy
our
New
second meeting of the new year.
The
But,
third.
oh, yeah, technically the third. I know, we can't forget about that.
Yeah, I mean, gee.
So the as what happens typically in January is we start forming the budget season. So as of last Thursday, that was a deadline for budgets. I have the majority of our budgets. I don't have all of them, so I have to do a little bit more chasing.
Well, let's call them out. Who's missing their budgets?
Oh geez, I would have to.
Oh, you're being kind. You know
We can have
who,
that
but
for
we'll.
next week.
I can have that for, yeah.
the next
I don't
meeting.
wanna, I know there's a couple of the bigger departments, but there is maybe one or two smaller departments that don't have everything in, so I don't wanna call somebody out and then not call everybody out. But, they know, I've reached out to everybody.
All right,
so-
fair warning. I'll look for
Yeah.
the call out at next meeting.
Yeah, so,
Gotta do your part.
I will start meeting with the finance committee next week. I believe Tuesday, the 25th, will be our first meeting, to start discussing the budgets, and then we get into our normal routine of meeting with a couple of departments every other week, for the next couple of months.
Now, they meet on what night?
Tuesday nights.
Tuesday nights, do they meet virtually as well as in person?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, same format as the select board
Okay.
meetings. So, looking forward to getting back into that. Also, on the same topic of finance, is that the federal government came out with their final rule for ARPA expenditures, and it greatly expanded our ability to spend those funds. We kind of had discussions beforehand about what we may or may not be able to spend on with these funds, but basically, the federal government gave great leverage to small communities like Barre, where they said that anything under $10 million can be considered revenue loss, and then therefore treated as if it were like free cash. So we have $1.6 million now that we can use for just about anything in the community. Now, I've reached back out to the Capital Strategic Solutions people, and they're going to get me an updated proposal. Costs haven't changed, but obviously I think that our need for their services might have shifted a little bit, because now it's not so unclear in these categories on what we can and what we cannot spend it. It's mainly just going to be making sure that everything gets reported correctly. That's going to be our biggest issue. So I think that, it's really helpful to small communities that now we have more leverage to use that money for investments, whether it's investments in equipment or the buildings or really anything. On that same note, the fire department, over the weekend, one of their fire trucks had some issues. It's engine 1 in station 2. It had a hard time making it back from one of the fire calls that they had over the weekend, so Chief Rogowski is very concerned about the condition of that fire truck. Not to mention that there's like a 18-month lead time on getting a new fire truck or a new ambulance.
What did he think was wrong with it? How old is it?
This fire truck is, I think, a 2002. And it has somewhere in the range of 76,000 hours on it. So I think that's a lot.
This is
According-
relatively new to us. Our old engine 1 had a problem with the engine they wanted to have fixed, and it was a cracked, actually, either a head or a block, which was not replaceable, not repairable, and the engine had to be put out of service. It was not repairable. This engine was picked up, as a replacement, but really a stopgap. It's an old truck to begin with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I was
that's the
told-
history on it anyway. We
Thank
had
you.
it for like, I don't know,
5
4 or
years.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah, I was told that this engine, when it was brought to the town, the fire department was told, this will be like a placeholder for a year, and then here we are, like year 5, and it's still hanging on.
Okay.
So I think we will have to have some serious discussions with the chief, maybe at the next meeting, about, looking at potentially using some ARPA funds to fund a replacement of a fire truck or an ambulance. Whether we do it as a lease purchase or, buy it outright, I mean, it's still like a significant cost, but I think this ARPA money can really help,
What is it, 450, 500,000?
like 600. And it goes up every month, you know, a
Goes up
lot, a lot.
crazily.
And
Engine
that-
4 we're in basically 500,000, right? Well, we're only 400 engine 4 or 5. But it's gone up so much because of COVID.
It's like every month he
Um,
gets an update.
Can this be repaired for a while again, or is this,
Well, we've got 18 months either way.
Right, yeah, so it is out for repair, but he says it's gonna be a substantial cost for repair. And they don't know the time frame. But not that that really matters, because like you said, it's an 18-month lead time. We're not getting a new fire truck tomorrow, but.
I didn't see why it went down. It was, I think it was one of the mutual aid fires in, I want to say Rutland, that it went to. I'm not sure. There's a couple over the weekend.
Right.
Um,
I do know that one of the concerns we have is right now we have this lead time. And then last week, the federal government's like, you guys can use this money on anything, including fire trucks and ambulances.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have
Tons of people buying fire trucks.
thousands, tens of thousands of communities and counties all over the country who are like, we're getting new fire trucks, we're getting new ambulances. And so our concern is that that issue is only going to be a prolonged period of time on the supply chain.
Yeah,
So,
18 months to 24 months.
yeah. And then the
See,
cost.
maybe have the opportunity to watch some of the bigger places like New York, when they replace their trucks every so many years. They get high up on the list for replacement because they buy so many. Maybe you get one of their used trucks that's
Right.
4 years old or 5 years old
Right.
for a song as well.
Yeah.
I know Bob doesn't like to go that route, but it's a possibility.
But right now, because it's so hard, you also have, it's just, all in all, it's a very competitive market, because it's almost impossible to find a used fire truck or ambulance, because every community that can't wait 18 or 24 months, they pick up that first used fire truck that comes on the market. So it's like, it's a tough market no matter which way you cut the pie. So, they also had frozen pipes at the headquarters over the weekend. Luckily, they did not burst, but they were able to get that issue fixed.
At the public safety building or at the fire station?
No, the fire station on School Street.
No, it's, yeah. The main freeze is coming into there. Used to always, they tried to address it when they finally did the bathroom over, but it's too close to the surface when it gets down to 10 below zero like it was the other morning.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah,
surprise.
so it was my concern for a couple of our buildings that we were gonna have frozen pipes. So unfortunately, we did have frozen pipes at the fire station. Fortunately, they did not burst and we didn't have a big mess to clean up. Other than that, I've just been, as I mentioned before, I have some grants that are coming down the pipeline. Hopefully, we can get some other funds to help fix up Miller's Beach, and have that as a good resource for the community in the summer.
And, we are getting close to probably deciding if we're going to go forward and build a fire station or not.
Yeah.
And as I recall, when the public safety building had the grand opening, I do remember former Senator Brewer talking with Chief Rogowski, promised him he'd find some funding for him for a firehouse. Maybe we ought to see if we can reach out to Steve and see if he has any avenues or any suggestions, and because we're going to be looking for that funding probably, I would think within the next year or so, to get that project going.
Yes.
And if he does had something in mind or has something he can do for that, we certainly should ask and see if he,
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think he'd say that to Bob just to be for lip service. I think he had an avenue or had something in mind that he could do for it when the time came, so.
Certainly he and Senator Goby and potentially Congressman McGovern have to be in our corner.
I would think the conversation is worth having, and if he can, talk to some folks and bend the ear on our behalf, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think, right now, with all of the federal funds that are coming our way, it would be a great time. I mean, I just got an email from Senator Goby's office the other day asking about capital projects. But they have this one ARPA bill, which I don't know if I had mentioned, I don't think I mentioned, I knew about this at our last meeting, but Senator Goby's office was able to get $75,000 for improvements at the senior center.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was something that I was able to request from her office because they were going forward with their first round of the ARPA funds. They were expected to do a similar budget, or they're expected to have a similar discussion about ARPA and do a second ARPA bill this summer. So there's definitely room for capital requests, at least at the state level.
I mean, I certainly run into these people all the time, so I'll be happy to mention it just in passing as well, because I'm always looking for regional school money in my other jobs. No, it's not
Yes.
one, it's another job. That's what I have.
But I'm just thinking now, we're getting to the, near
Well, we
the
get
end
to
of
the
that.
point where we have to start thinking about
We gotta start
funding
thinking about funding, and, if we could locate and secure some grant money, it's a lot less to bring to the
Well, there's no
town.
way we're gonna do it without it. I don't think. I
No,
only
well,
say that
It'd
because,
be a heck of an override.
well,
And,
and not only that, you're looking at double digit, you know what I mean? You're talking about $15-16 million probably for this.
Oh, I hope not.
Oh, listen,
Um,
there's a Spencer East Brookfield, okay, and they have kind of a very small, middle school, high school together, right? It's not a big deal, he's probably gone by 100 times. They're doing an addition renovation, $90 million. I said 90 million.
That's
I mean,
the cost of.
It's just
But
not what
luckily,
it used to be.
Luckily, when you do a firehouse, you can have a steel structure which
Right,
does the
for part
basic
of it,
bays,
yeah.
which are relatively inexpensive. And it depends how detailed you get. What we should have and have never had down there, we should have sleeping quarters for the
Mm-hmm.
people that are stationed there. We have male and female in the fire department. We
Right.
should have separate sleeping quarters,
Right.
separate showers for the male, which
Right.
we don't. Right now, they
Right.
stuck a bathroom in, and that's all they got to do. So you have to have a certain portion of living quarters.
Right.
In some office space, and you should have a nice meeting room.
Mhm.
But overall, most of the large structure is open bays, and it tends to keep the numbers down, and it wouldn't surprise me if this thing comes in as low as maybe 8 million or under.
Hey,
It's just,
listen.
I hope.
I'm just a school person, okay? And I will tell you, having been involved and continue to be involved in construction in the public sector right now, there is nothing, there's no free lunch. I mean, it is extremely expensive.
And that's the thing, I don't know how bad they've gone. I
And my
know how
hope
the
is
private
that
sector's
if
going.
we are able to get some grant funding, because what I worry about, and I probably am not alone with this worry, I'm worrying about our capacity to borrow, not having our financial house in order.
Right.
I really worry about that.
We've
That
been
will
trying
be-
hard to get this in order and get a bond
Well,
ready. We're
it-
not gotten with our free cash, not getting certified.
Yeah, well, the thing of it is,
Yeah.
the town's done great things with putting money in places. It's just that we don't have it in a way that the auditors are happy with.
I know.
And we've got to get there, so. I'll
And
be-
sadly, we are so greatly improved from where we were 5 years
Yeah.
ago. But it's
I believe you.
it's not done.
But
It's
I mean,
good.
I just want to make sure that in 2 years, if we're at the point where we need to consider a borrow, that we have
We
our
can.
house in order.
Right.
And so we're working at it, and I know no one's happy about going with Vadar. Everybody's wishes it was the thing they wanted, the thing even, and so it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we'll get there.
I know, but they can use it.
Yeah. Oh, they'll be
They'll get
fine.
used to it, and that will make the auditors happy. We'll close the gaps in a lot of our vulnerability and exposures
Yeah.
which should close off our exposures. That was the whole issues. And that alone is gonna really improve the audit, because the bulk of what they covered is gonna be repaired by this. The Chapter 90 is a different issue, and that has to be repaired as well.
And
But
that
when
to-
those
that
gaps
to
are
me is
closed
so
off,
simple to
we should
fix.
do well in audit.
I mean, that Chapter 90 is not difficult to fix. It just needs to happen.
It needs to happen, absolutely, and that keeps our cash flow the way it should go.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't leave us a special town meeting going to stabilization, which I think that hurts us to go to stabilization. I don't think it helps, even though it's little. But to dip into it now is wiser than letting those rates come back on a vendor
Yeah.
bid next year and be 50% higher, because then it's gonna cost us all the more. I think it's smart to get it done now, and I'd rather borrow 30 or 40 now from stabilization and do that and replenish it than
absolutely.
to have to come up with 60 more later.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about. Same thing as the truck we just purchased for the,
Yeah.
the timing is, big.
That is all I have for tonight.
Okay. Okay, it's now 8:45. I move we adjourn.
Second that motion?
Motion and second to adjourn. Any further debate? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you all.
All right.